Hey guys, Dave here. Welcome to Computer Hobbyist. Today we're going to talk about how to use an Xbox controller with Monogame. First thing we're going to do here is we're going to add these different sounds and stuff to the pipeline. Reason for that is because I'm going to set it up where if you press certain buttons, certain sounds and so forth are played. So let's set it up in the pipeline. I'm using Visual Studio for Mac, and content.mgcb editor is built right into Visual Studio for it. It's not a separate item, so that's why it probably looks different than what you're used to using. All right, so these are just little sounds and stuff I got from a game that I had made that played like a board game. I'm just using these as an example. So let's add them to the pipeline. All right, they're there. First thing we want to do here is you want to set up a one-shot button. What that is when you press a button on a joystick, normally as long as you're holding it down, it will keep registering. So like for example with the update running 1/60th of a second, if you hold it down for a second and you're trying to shoot or something, you're going to shoot 60 times. If you create a one-shot button, that means when you press the button, it only registers one time and won't register again until you lift up the button and press it again. So let's do that. Let's add a class here. One shot Xbox button. So instead of typing everything in and making you wait forever as I do so, I'm just going to paste the stuff in as I go along and explain what I'm doing. All right, so let's paste this guy in here. So this keeps track of the current gamepad state and the previous gamepad state. And this here is what you use to get the state. So whenever you want to get a state here, this is static too, so you don't have to declare an instance of this class when you use it. Whenever you want the state of it, you use this get state here inside the one-shot Xbox button. And this method here is pressed, tells you if it's been pressed, and the next one just tells you if it has not been pressed. Very simple class, but it works well. All right, let's go to the game1.cs. All right, let's add our libraries at the top. So just system.collections.generic, XNA framework, XNA framework audio, XNA framework graphics, XNA framework input. That should be all that we need. All right, let's put in some private fields. There's our graphics device manager or sprite batch, and game piece position. We're just using a vector2 to keep track of that. And the game piece here, that's a texture 2D. That's a game piece we're going to move around the screen. And here's a list of sound effects. Okay, so let's do the initialize here. So we'll initialize the sound effects. And put in the game piece position. And load the game piece here, which is night 5. And then we're going to go to our load content to load all the sounds. All right, those are loaded there. All right, so the next thing we're going to want to create is, let's do the draw here. This is just where it draws the game piece each turn. And let's go to the update. Update's going to, every 1/60th of a second is going to call. Handle gamepad input, I'll have to add that method. That's the main method for this. All right, let's put it down here. All right, for some reason, the one-shot Xbox button is not registering. Oh, you know why? Because I have the old namespace here. So hold on. And that just crashed. This is a problem they're having with Visual Studio for Mac. Sometimes when you click on the tabs, it crashes here and you can't get out of it, so let's restart it. Hopefully it gives me an option to save. Yes, it does. All right, we're back. Let's see if we can get the namespace. It should be actually remove this. I just do that so I can keep track that I need to just delete this project when I'm done with the video. All right, let's see if that changed things here. Yes, it did. So let me, is there anything else we need to do here first before I explain what's going on? Yeah, keep game piece on screen. Let me add that. Don't worry, I'll explain how all this works. Let me just get it set up here. All right, before I explain it, let's just run it, and I'll show you what it does, and then I'll explain how the code works. I've got my Xbox controller turned on here. All right, so top left stick moves it up, down, left, and right. As you notice, it never goes off the screen, which is good. And then for the right stick, does the same thing, up, down, left, and right. Obviously, if you're going to make a game or something, you're not going to have the right stick do the same thing as the left stick. You'll probably have it rotate something or the other. And then as far as the gamepad part, that's actually used as a button in this. I have this set up, though, where the buttons are not one-shot buttons, so as long as you hold the button, it continues to move in that direction. And then as far as the buttons, let's do the X button. The X button will make a noise.
Human combat.
And then the Y button will make
Human
another
movement.
noise. B button.
Orc combat.
That was the A button. And then the back button. Oops, sorry, I shouldn't have pressed that. That stops the program, but but you know that works. All right, and then the next button.
Regeneration.
And then for the top bumper, that was the one on the right, one on the left. And that's the right trigger. And that's the left trigger. So that's basically what it does. Now we'll talk about how it works. All right, so here's handle gamepad input. You got to start by getting the gamepad capabilities. The code needs to know what components that your controller has and stuff. So use gamepad capabilities for that. And player index 1, so that's for player 1. And then if capabilities is connected, that's just saying if the controller is connected. And you get your gamepad state from your one-shot Xbox button.getState. Since handle gamepad input is being called 60 times a second, so the Xbox button.getState will check what you've pressed 60 times a second. All right, here's your left thumbstick. First, it checks the capability to see if you have a left X thumbstick, and then it just sets the game piece position.x. So it's saying game piece position.x equals game piece position.x plus state.thumbstick of x motion times 10. And if it's positive, it will move to the right. If it's negative, it will move to the left. And here's for the Y, same thing. If it's positive, I believe it moves. If it's positive, it moves down, I think, and negative, it moves up, or is it the other way around? I can't remember, but you get the idea. And then right thumbstick works just the same way. All right, here's your buttons. Here's capabilities.hasX button, so it checks to see if your controller has one before it does anything. And now it's checking the state, so if it's saying if button X is down, and then it's using our one-shot class here and saying if it has not been pressed, then play the sound effect. Otherwise, if you don't check if it's been pressed and you just let it continually go 60 times a second, you're going to have this sound play 60 times a second, which is probably not what you want. But if you do want something like if you have like a machine gun, you want to shoot 60 times a second, you would remove this one-shot Xbox button that has not been pressed. Just go without that line, and then it will shoot 60 times a second, provided you hold down the button for the whole second. All right, and same goes here for the Y button. Just checking if the Y button's down and it hasn't been pressed, and then it plays a new sound effect. And your B button, same thing. A button checks if it's down and hasn't been pressed, and then plays a different sound. As far as the back button, I didn't code it here. I actually commented that out because if you go up here, yeah, if your button.back is pressed, it ends the program. All right, and here's the start button. Works just like the X, Y, A, and B button. And here's the bumpers. You just treat those like buttons. They're nothing special. They're just another button. So, and they're called left. This one's called the left shoulder. That's what the bumper's called. And here's one if it has a right shoulder button. Those will each play a separate sound. And then the triggers, those are just treated like regular buttons too. So you're just checking if it's down, if it hasn't been pressed. And then you play the sound effect too. So that was your left trigger. Here's your right trigger. And now here's your D-pad. Remember I mentioned that a D-pad, they're just buttons. They're not like the sticks up here. The sticks, one thing I want to mention, the thumbsticks, is if you push it like halfway to the left, it will have a different value than if you push it all the way to the left. So if you can use that to control speed. So if you just barely move it, your figure is going to move slowly. But if you move it all the way to the left, it will move faster to the left. All right, so let's go back down here. Here's your D-pad. Like I said, it's just buttons. So you're just checking first if it has a D-pad left button. Then if D-pad left is down, then it changes the game piece position. So we're just using the D-pad to move things around the screen. And then down here, keep game piece on screen. Without this, when you're moving the token around the screen, if you go all the way left, it will go off the screen, or all the way right off the screen, or all the way up, all the way down. Use this stuff, keep it on the screen, basically. So like here, if game piece position that X is less than 0, meaning it's gone to the left off the screen, it runs this line of code here, creates a new vector 2 where it puts it at 0 instead of at a negative value. And the same goes for the Y one. It puts the Y coordinate at 0 instead of a negative value. And then if you're going to the right, it's checking the preferred back buffer width minus the game piece width. And if it's greater than that, then it has to move the game piece to the left. It'll take the preferred back buffer width, subtract the game piece width from it to get the X value. And the same goes with the Y for the preferred back buffer height and so forth. Anyhow, thanks for watching, guys. I know it was a really fast video, but this isn't too complex, so hopefully this will get you started on using a Xbox joystick with whatever video game you're making. Another cool thing is this also supports Super Nintendo controllers. So if you have a Super Nintendo controller, you can control it through this. Just the names of the different things. It's not going to have like has left X thumbstick, but you just check the capabilities and see what the options are for it and stuff. Have a good evening.